Welcome. This is Maria Ferrer, Project Manager for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club. With me tonight is Rodrigo Blanco Calderon, author of The Night from Seven Stories Press. The Night is the club's October book of the month, and we are happy to have Rodrigo with us tonight to talk about his book. Welcome, Rodrigo. You've published 3 short story collections, and The Night is your first novel. Congratulations. The Night is a novel about writing a novel. You styled it after Bolaño's The Savage Detectives, and you admit to using lines and scenes from other novels and other works that you liked. But what triggered your inspiration? Was it one novel, one phrase, one character? What triggered your inspiration?
Well, The Night, first, I wrote it as a short story because I have some weird experience with a motorcycle guy in Caracas who actually gave me a piece of paper with some apocalyptic message about Venezuela. And that was the trigger to write this unfinished short story. But the years passed, and then I heard about the death of Darío Lancini, who is a very important poet for me in Venezuela. So I started to investigate about the life of Darío Lancini, and that's when I realized that I have to write a novel instead of a short story. Then I used the structure of the Savage Detective of Bolaño, because for me was almost like the same kind of novel. The novel written as almost critic and police investigation.
Yes. You use Miguel a lot for he's sort of like a psychiatrist / detective. You know, he's always he's like in the know. He knows like what the police are saying, what the government is sort of thinking and plotting, and you know, and he shares that with Matthias and everything. That's very interesting. Now, you play a lot with the words in the book, you know, with your anagrams and the palindromes. And in fact, I notice a lot of your characters are writers, or they're you know, painting, you know, they're painters, but they're painting words. And, you know, the psychiatrists are writing reports, and the police are writing reports, and, you know, the motorcycle guy has the writing papers and, you know, their articles. Now, do you think that the pen is mightier than the sword?
Well, in Venezuela, I think not, because I think the sword or the guns are mightier than the pen. It's a shame, but it's a very violent country, and Caracas is a very violent city. So it's for me was actually a way to put these two spheres in touch. No, the an environment such a violent as the Venezuelan is, and 3 characters that seems only to be interested in literature, in wordplay. I liked this contradiction. It reminds me a little bit of the character of the Cameron, who got together to share a story, while in the outside you have the plague, you know, ravaging the city. So also I'm a big fan of Jorge Luis Borges. For me, it's like God. So I liked the literature and the short stories and the novels who talks about writers and readers. It's a very familiar thing to me. So when I discovered the life and the works of Darío Lancini, who wrote a book entirely made of palindromes, for me was like a great joy and a great opportunity to build a story about writers, about workplace, about hidden message in the writing. So that's why my novel is so full of intellectuals, critics, painters, but also in touch with I insist, a very violent atmosphere, and that's why also I think a tribute to Roberto Bolaño's work, because he used to write about poets who are also killers or who are also terrorists, and it's a very weird combination that you can find in Latin America sometimes.
Yes, yes. Let's get back to the name dropping and stuff. I mean, I think you've listed so many painters and so many writers, and I noticed that you also, you know, included yourself in there. I saw that little reference, very cute. Were you like giving them a voice, giving them, you know, a little promotion? Why did you include so many, because, you know, there's so many.
But I didn't realize that they were so many until I had the first impressions about the novel, especially with the translators, that I gave them a really hard time trying to figure out who is who in my novel. But for me, it was a very natural thing, a very organic thing to put in my fiction works the writers, the characters of my lectures, you know. So in first place, it wasn't very a very intended thing that I did, but I only tried to give tribute to one writer, and that is Dario Lancini. I made it in purpose to. That's why I made a big searching about his life, and that's why his life take place the second part of the novel. No, that's the only tribute that I made on purpose. The others is like it was a natural thing to do for me, because I'm always in touch with writers, with fictional characters, and I put myself in the novel as a way to make fun of myself, to be part of this casting of writers who think sometimes that the only thing important in the world is the literature. But also I like to include the origins of the novel, because I already published a short story where some of the characters that appears in the night are already sketched. No? That's why also I allowed myself to make a, how do you say that in cine, when someone
the references,
a cameo, no?
A cameo appearance. Yes.
Yeah, a cameo appearance. That's right.
Very good. Now, why Venezuela and why 2010?
Because, well, Venezuela is my my home, is my country, and 2010 was a very important year, because that year the government declared the power emergency. No? It begins the blackouts. It begins a very different kind of crisis, and for me it was like a moment when I realized that the things, the crisis, the political and social situation, it will get worse and worse, because all the public spaces were in the dark, and the crimes rose, and it was a moment when all the people in Venezuela have to hide in their own homes to try to be safe. And for me, that was a thing that touched me, and that was when I started to think that I maybe wanted to live in another country.
Yes, yes. No, I saw that too in the book, you know, the darkness, you know, when the blackouts come, you know, everybody, I remember that first scene where Miguel and Mateos are in the restaurant, and they're, you know, and the restaurant is full, they're all having dinner, they're having a good time, and the lights go out. You know, and the waiters turn on, you know, the candles and stuff, and everybody goes back, but the laughter and the chuckling is false almost. It's you know, automatic. And then, like, you know, Miguel says that he blinks and the whole restaurant is gone. Everybody's gone and everybody's whispering who's there, you know, and then when they come out, it's like really, really dark and stuff. And I saw that throughout the book. You know, your blackout is you know, in the dark is when bad things happen, is when the monsters come out, you know, when the people disappear, when they get tortured, when you know, they get killed, and you know, and sometimes you stumble upon these things and you don't want to see them again. And then the monster in the dark, you know, a few times in your novel, it was like a political person, or it was the son of a political person, or the son of a famous person. Yeah, it was like the monster was going crazy, you know?
Yeah, for me, it's like a way to say that, well, in First World, we all assume that we always will have power, electricity, and we always have all the commodities that technology gave us. But unfortunately, in countries like Venezuela under this government, these public servers are not assured, and when you don't have the lights in the streets, when you start to deal currently with blackouts, you realize that the people behave change, that some people start to take advantage of this situation to do very, very ugly things. That I think I have the feeling that when the blackouts began, Venezuela falls into in a very dark Gothic situation, and it was like traveling in time to the past. And not the past of my country, but also the past of the humanity. You know, it's a very, very weird feeling.
Yes, it was. You know, they say about your novel that it's a thriller. There were parts of it that were dark, and they were a little bit scary when you realize that people can be so, you know, inhumane, and that monsters do exist. And sometimes, you know, that wonderful, you know, man that you met in the coffee shop and whatever is a monster, you know. But that all made it very exciting as I was reading and as I was getting into it. But in the second part of the book, your characters are all over the globe: Paris, Athens, Barcelona. And, you know, it's sort of like they went away to write, to study, you know, on trips and whatever, but invariably they all return back to Caracas. Is that sort of like, you know, like the whole, the feeling about going home, you know, being home, maybe giving home a second chance, hoping that you know, maybe the government has gotten better or is doing better? Is that the pull of home?
Well, not exactly, but it's a very interesting approach. But with the second part of the novel, where I talk about the life of Dario Lancini, it was an opportunity to me to step back from the present, from the current situation, the political situation, and try to take a look to the decades before, to the story that is behind the arrival of Hugo Chavez to the power. Because the problem with when we talk about Venezuela is that all the conversation, all the attention is focused on Hugo Chavez, all the things that he did, that to the present, no one can deny the ugly things that he did. But for me, I didn't try to write the novel of the dictator. I didn't try to write the novel of the present, but I prefer to write a novel about how this government and how this darkness could take place in my country. No? And when you ask yourself this question, you start to realize that the things were written many years before the arrival of Hugo Chavez to the power. And that's why I focus on a character like the psychiatrist Edmundo Chirinos, who actually existed, who was the most important psychiatrist in Venezuela, a very close person to many different presidents. And he was also at the same time a man who raped his patients, that were all women. And he was a very important and popular person in the cultural field in Venezuela. And for me, was like try to understand how the Venezuelan society could uncover such a monster who was related to Hugo Chavez, who was related to many presidents before Hugo Chavez. And I had the impression that the seed, the evil seed, was already planted in my country many years before the arrival of Hugo Chavez to the power. And that's why in the second part of the novel, I try to open the scope to give me and give my characters the chance to travel from many different places and times, and to get back to the present on the novel. So now that I'm answering your question, I got the feeling that you're partly right. I think I had the chance to dream with following Darío Lancini, to dream with another possible Venezuela that it couldn't be real.
Yes. Tell us about your writing process. How long did it take to write this book? And how did you keep track of so many characters?
It took me 3 years to write the novel. It's my writing process is very. I don't have this discipline to write every single day from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for example. I'm very intuitive. No, I'm a very intuitive person concerning my writing, so I can pass like 4 weeks reading books about the history of Poland, because I know one chapter it would be placed in Varsovia, and then I can start to write for 2 weeks like a madman, and then I stop and then I goes again. So for me it was a very how could I put it? I didn't have a rigid method to follow to do my novel. That's why it took me so long, 3 years. And for me I had this feeling of vertigo when I finished the second part, when I realized that the characters and the plot continue to appear and to grow and to connect with each other. So in a moment I had to make some draws, make a plan that I put it in the wall in front of me, to remember who was who and where these two different characters will meet and why. But it arrived a moment when I could manage all these crazy things without even looking the map and the notes I took. So that's why I think there are readers that have really problems to follow the plots and the history, and maybe hated the book. But there are few others that might be interested in this craziness.
Well, I have to tell you that I made my own cheat sheet, you know. I put down, okay, Miguel, psychiatrist, Mateas, you know, writer, Margarita 1, Margarita 2, it was 2. And then Pedro, you know, and so I had my own little list, you know, and I come back and then, all right, I know who this is and I know who that is. It is, but once you, it's true, once you get, you're halfway through, you know who's who, you know who, you know, Antonieta is married to Dario, and then you know that Margarita too, unfortunately, met up with Gonzalo, and that did not go well. But yes, so you are a teacher, and you are teaching your students, you know, creative writing. Yeah. So what are you teaching them, and who are you teaching them to read?
Well, I was a professor of critic and theory of literature in la Universidad Central de Venezuela for 10 years. Then I had to quit the university for try to work with a publishing house that didn't work that well because it's a business and I'm not a businessman. And then I had to move out from Venezuela, first to Paris, then to Malaga. It was here in Malaga that I started all over to teaching through Zoom during the pandemic. It gave me the opportunity to give creative writing lessons, no? To work with very small group of people who are interested in writing novels or short story collections. So I try to read and quote as examples of writing the writers that I admire. It could be Borges, it could be Horacio Quiroga, it could be the Venezuelan writer Elisa Lerner, but I also try to read a lot of books about creative writing. So I use, for example, this book of Stephen King on writing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. It's really, he gave really clear example of what you should do in very particular situation of writing. I use also the books of Ray Bradbury. There are many things that I like to use in my class. I try to combine classic authors and contemporary authors because people always tend to read what is going on in the present.
Yes. So you're not a publisher anymore?
No, unfortunately, I'm not a publisher anymore. I tried 2 times with 2 different publishing houses, very small publishing houses. I think we did a really important and nice work, but with the economic situation in Venezuela, it was really hard. It was almost impossible to continue to publish.
So what are you reading now, you personally?
Well, because I also have columns in the newspaper, I had to read novelties and things that are being published now. I just finished this book of essays from Elisabenda Julibert. It's called Hombres Fatales. it's like the contrary of femme fatale. It's like la metamorfosis del deseo masculino en la literatura y el cine. The metamorphosis of masculine desire in literature and movies. It's a very interesting book because Julie Verne tells us that behind this mythology about the femme fatale, the woman that drives crazy the men and push them into the self-destruction, she says that this type of stories and character mythology actually tells us about the way the men used to look and desire women. It's a really changing point of view, a little bit like Orientalism, the Edward Said concerning politics, but in this case with the relationships between men and women. And also I'm started to read another essay. I don't know how to translate this. It's Las Rapadas. It's like the woman whose hair is forced to be cut to the edge. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself. Las Rapadas is when you force someone
to shave their head.
To shave your head, no? And it's a story about the woman during the dictatorship of Franco, how they've been forced to shave their heads as a way of humiliation. I'm interested in this book because what is happening right now in Iran, and this kind of protest of the actresses in Hollywood cutting their own hair, and for me was like a really strange things to do, and then I tried to be more informed about the subject. I read a lot.
You have to be in solidarity. So you have to be in solidarity, and so you have to cut off your hair now.
I'm really getting bold, so I'm doing
very soon, right? Very soon.
The next time we met each other, I'll be completely bald.
So tell us, any advice for new writers?
I think the main task of a writer should be to be a better reader. There's no way you can become a writer if you are not a very, very good reader. And that's the first thing that I will recommend, because sometimes you find there are a lot of people who want to be a writer, but they don't actually read almost anything. That's a contradiction for me. And the second thing is try to always cultivate your inner life. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. Try to be in touch with your inner self, with your with that little voice who tells you all the time to pay attention what's happening in the world, what's happening in yourself, what's happening with the people you are living with. It's like the writing for me is a very shy and solitude way of empathy. No? So you cannot be empathic with anyone else if you're not empathic with yourself, if you're not constantly trying to listen your inner voice, your inner self. I know it sounds like autoayuda, I don't know how you say that, like some master guru of spirituality, but I think that's the most important thing, because a writer, I think, is someone who has something to say, who believes, who has something to say. And it's important that that thing that you are supposed to say, it's not the things that are already being said in the media or are already being said in Facebook or Twitter. No?
And let's end with what are your plans? Are you working on another novel? Are you working on another short story collection? What are you working on? What's next for you?
I don't know. I'm always working in different projects at the same time. I have like 2 or 3 novels. I have a short story collection. I have like 2 books of essays. So I am always working in different projects. And that's why normally it takes me a lot to finish every one of them. So I don't know who's going to be the next book. I suppose it would be the one that I finish first. I hope it would be a novel, because the rights are better. So I have to leave.
Will it be another thriller?
No,
are you going for something lighter this time?
No, I think it's lighter. It's not that dark kind of story like The Night is, but it has to be always with Venezuela. And I have another novel. It has nothing to do with Venezuela, but I made it that way in purpose because I needed to be less obsessed with what's happening in my country.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you, Rodrigo, for being with us tonight. It was a pleasure speaking with you and learning more about your novel, The Night, from 7 Stories Press. We wish you happy writing on all your projects. And for our listeners tuning in, happy reading, and always read Latino Lit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.